This is part 5 and 6 of our section on Hinduism. Part 5 is a normal lecture. It includes a couple short videos whose links I will put up on the website for you to watch. And part 6 is actually a series of readings of 3 different people, 3 different Hindus, talking about what Hinduism means to them and the way they think about it. So part 6 will be to read those readings and to answer the discussion question. But before you read the readings, I'm going to talk a little bit about them. And before I do that, we're going to talk about part 5, modernity and being Hindu. What is it like to be Hindu in the modern world, and what are some of the challenges that it's facing? Up here I have a picture of 2 women. They're in India. They are walking down the street. It looks like a mother and daughter. You can see the mother is wearing traditional Indian clothing, and the daughter is wearing jeans and a t-shirt. So the Western world has had a great impact on India, as it has had on much of Asia. And increasingly young people are more drawn towards Western culture, Western movies, TV, and clothing and things like that. And that has had an impact on the religion, as we're going to see in the videos today. Down in the corner here is this picture that I found online. I just thought this was awesome. This is these are the gods, clearly, and they're drawn like comic book characters. So it's not uncommon now for people to make these little like comic books, these little like stories of the gods, Puranas they're called, right? Anytime you have stories of the gods, they're called Puranas. But they're drawn up like comic books, and they're meant to engage young people who otherwise might think their religions are too boring, or devotion's not interesting. So here you can see, here's Durga, right? She has her trident, and she has her tiger. That is Agni, the god of fire. There's Shiva, who's like the leader of the gang, I guess. There's Krishna. There is Sarasvati with her guitar, her musical instrument. There's Hanuman. Of course, you got to have Hanuman. That goddess right there, I'm not really sure. I'm guessing that that's Lakshmi. She's standing next to Vishnu, but she might not be. She might be someone else. And this here, I'm guessing that this could be Ram. This could be Ram from the Ramayana, because he's a very popular figure too. But I just thought that was really pretty cool. I would love to read comic books based on Indian myths. I think that'd be Hindu myths. I think that'd be awesome. I want to find them. If anyone finds them online for me, let me know. So that's one way that Hinduism is kind of being modernized a little bit to appeal to young people. So Hinduism over time has been over the years has been influenced many times by contact with different religions, Buddhism, Jainism, both of which we'll talk about, both of which are offshoots of Hinduism. Later, Islam, Muslim traders visited India starting as early as, the 8th or 9th century. That had an impact, and later Persian conquerors who were Muslim took over northern India, so that had an impact on Hinduism. Of course, Christianity had an impact on Hinduism via British rule. India was under British rule for 2 or 3 centuries. And all of these religions had an impact on Hinduism. British rule in particular tried to correct certain weaknesses that it saw in Hinduism. It saw, in their own words, the British saw Hinduism as being intellectually incoherent and ethically unsound. Basically what that means is that the British came from a very specific background, a Christian background, and they came and they didn't understand Hinduism. And so they just kind of labeled it as not making any sense and not having any values. And this has been something that Hindus have had to defend over the years. In the West, our religions often come with the 10 commandments. We come with these lists of rules. This is what you do, this is what you don't do, very clearly spelled out. Hinduism doesn't do that. Now, Hinduism expects that people be good people. That's part of your Dharma. Dharma means moral obligations, right? Your Dharma is to be a good person, is to perform actions selflessly so you don't, build up more karma. that's a part of the religion, but there's no list of rules. And to be honest, you will find a lot of religions don't have a list of rules to follow. And Westerners did not understand that. Mahatma Gandhi is pictured down here, and a lot of his work was trying to enact what he saw as Hindu values of nonviolence, values of peace, values of taking care of your society, taking care of each other. Because again, part of your Dharma is that you have a place in your society, and part of what you need to do is to take care of the people around you. Right, it's part of devotion. So there have been, so in addition to reactions to foreigners and foreign religions, there have been a number of modern movements that have had an impact on Hinduism. Right, where we're facing foreign influence such as Christianity, Islam, and so on and so forth, forced Hinduism to define itself more clearly, to say, no, you don't understand us. This is what we are. And again, we'll see this again and again in religions throughout the world. When different cultures meet each other, it forces each culture to define themselves more. It's like, you are this and I am that, right? Had a big influence in Hinduism in particular. Some modern movements that affected Hinduism, of course, that of Gandhi, who taught that Hinduism is in a lot of ways like a universal religion. That this idea that God takes many manifestations kind of explains all the different religions in the world. That, right, God has taken many manifestations everywhere. He also taught nonviolence, the importance of nonviolence. Ramakrishna, who was a great guru who taught the oneness of all religions. Not that Hinduism was the universal religion, but rather that all religions are kind of teaching the same thing. He also taught a sort of pure devotion, that religion should be, or Hinduism should be based in this pure love for the gods, and that devotion should be a part of every action that you take during the day. So he was a great leader, a great guru, and has had a large impact on modern Hindu philosophy. And of course, there have been a number of social reform movements, especially in terms of women's rights, rights for the outcasts, for the lower castes, education, environmentalism, democracy. All these movements are being put forth as having Hindu, or being based in Hindu ideals, right? The divinity of all people, that everyone has an Atman, and everyone's Atman is a bit of Brahman, and in that sense everyone is equal. And that nature is a manifestation of God as well, and needs to be taken care of, and so on and so forth. So a lot of these ideas have been put forth very recently, like in the last century or so, really. But Hinduism has also had a great impact on the rest of the world, right? It's spread through immigration. We saw that. We saw it in London, in those beautiful, that large, beautiful temple that they have there. There are a lot of Hindu temples in England. It's spread into America. We're going to watch a video later on about Hindus who immigrated to America and the effect that had on their religion. There have been a few converts here and there. Conversion to Hinduism is not common because, again, it's just something that you do. It's a part of your background. It's something you learn from your parents. It's not something that's commonly converted to. But it has gained interest in America, in Europe, and there have been a couple people here and there who have converted. Or actually, in part 6, we're going to get to read an essay written by a convert. Philosophical concepts like karma and dharma have certainly had a great impact on the West. And then gurus. The gurus have had a large impact, or have had a large influence on the spread of Hinduism. So let's take a look at the gurus for a moment. So gurus are spiritual guides. They're teachers. Sometimes some gurus might even be considered to be enlightened beings, Sometimes they might be considered to be in some way manifestations of the gods. There's a parable of a cup and a pitcher that says that the pitcher is like the guru. The pitcher is full of water, and like the guru is full of knowledge, and you have a cup, which is like the student. And so the pitcher fills the cup, but if at any point the cup becomes full, or the cup has more water than the pitcher gets low on water, then the cup should move on, right? Like if you learn everything you have to learn from your guru, then you should move on to a new guru. So people might have multiple gurus. They might go from guru to guru. Generally, people stick with one guru all their life, because there's an idea that gurus, if they're enlightened beings, there's no way that just an average person can just learn everything they have to teach like that and move on to someone else. Most people will stay with their guru all their life. But again, you do see people who move from guru to guru who are trying to gain as much knowledge as possible. We'll see that in the story of Buddha. Gurus' teachings are studied carefully. Their images are sometimes put on altars. We saw examples of that in lecture 4. You can usually buy pictures of famous gurus in the marketplaces. You can put them on the altars. You can put their teachings, their writings on your altar. So let's take a look at a couple of gurus, a couple of famous gurus. This is Amma. Her full title is Mata Amritanandamayi Devi. And you'll notice this word Devi means goddess. People believe that she is a manifestation of the mother goddess. The story of her, of Amma, and by the way, Amma means like mom in Hindi language. The story of Amma is that she was born into a high caste. As a child, she was like a very special child. She was very intelligent. She was very sweet. She was very giving, and people, thought that she was special in some way, that she'd been marked off, maybe to do karma yoga, to do selfless service. And by the time she became a teenager, she had done a lot of meditation and thought, and she'd realized that she was an incarnation of the mother goddess. And where most gurus, male and female gurus both, most gurus will give teachings. They'll give these public teachings where everyone will come and listen to their interpretations of the Vedas and things like that. What she does is she comes and she gives hugs to everyone who visits her. Every time she has a teaching, she gives a very short teaching about love, and then people get into a long line and she gives hugs to everyone. And I've known people who went to India and had and got to meet Amma, and they said that honestly, there is something special about her. And when she hugs you like you are her child. She hugs you like she knows you and she loves you. And it's a great blessing to be hugged by Amma. And she has become very popular in other parts of the world. You can see here she's with some English women. She travels occasionally to other countries to kind of spread her message of kind of universal motherly love, and she's very popular. Another guru who passed away but is still very influential is Yogananda. Yogananda was a student of some famous gurus in India who kind of got together and decided that they'd studied Christianity just as a study to learn more about it, and they studied Judaism and Islam, and these Hindu gurus decided that the thing that was lacking in Western religion was the feminine divine, right? People in the West, they felt, had lost touch with the mother goddess. And so they talked about it amongst themselves, and they decided to send some of their students over to start teaching people about Hinduism, about the mother goddess, and some of those principles. Yogananda was their best student, and he was sent. He ended up settling in California, and he formed a commune there, and he taught Hinduism. He taught meditation, and in fact, that commune is still there today. I've actually visited it. And it has, they have several other sister communes all around the world. They specialize in teaching meditation to people. They have meditation retreats and things like that. And it was because of Yogananda. He also had an autobiography that was very popular in the 50s and 60s. You can still get it. You can find it on Amazon. It's called The Autobiography of a Yogi. It's an interesting read. Because of Yogananda and a couple other gurus like him, he kind of spread the understanding, a greater understanding of Hinduism to the West. And he is also very well respected in India as well. So, as I've kind of hinted to, the question of Hindu identity has kind of become a major issue in the last 100, 200 years, as India was put under colonial rule with Britain, and as it gained independence. There's a lot of question about what it means to be Hindu. And there have been some political answers to that question. And in fact, there are many, many political parties in India, many, many political parties. And of those, there are three that are religious political parties. They're religious and Hindu nationalistic is what they are. These parties tend to be very conservative. They tend to think of India as needing to be for Hindus first, and that people of other religions should either convert or respect the fact that it's a Hindu country. And some of them are the RSS, the BJP, the BHP, and you'll read about them in newspapers when you read about Indian politics. They're all very active political parties. So there is that idea floating around India, this idea of, is India for Hindus? Is Hinduism inextricably linked to Indian politics? Now, India's constitution has enshrined secularism. India's constitution has put forth that India must be a secular and non-religious have a non-religious government. But like America, like most countries, there has been a large debate in recent years about to what extent religion can inform politics. I wanted to throw that out there. I also wanted to throw out this. I thought this was interesting. Even though India's constitution enshrines secularism, the Supreme Court of India has put forth a definition of Hinduism, which is, I think, very interesting. I'm not sure if that you want to call that, I'm not sure if that's a contradiction or not. But I think it's interesting that after 8,000 years, someone decided to define Hinduism, right? This is probably one of the first times people have tried to put out the definition of Hinduism, especially in political law. But the definition the Indian Supreme Court put out is that Hinduism accepts and reveres the Vedas as the foundation of Hindu philosophy, right? The Vedas are inextricable to Hinduism. There's a spirit of tolerance and willingness to understand and appreciate others' points of views and recognizing that truth has many sides. And this is a reference to the fact that there are many different sects and gods in Hinduism. Different people might worship different gods or worship in different ways. Acceptance of belief that the vast cosmic periods of creation, maintenance, and dissolution continuously reoccur, right? Again, this idea of that the time is cyclical, that everything is cyclical. It's not a straight line with a beginning and an end. Everything goes in cycles. And even if the universe itself was dissolved, it would be recreated again. We would just keep going in cycles. Acceptance, belief in the idea of reincarnation, which fits into the last one. Recognition that paths to salvation and truth are many. Recognition that there may be numerous gods and goddesses to worship without necessarily believing in worship through idols. So people are not required to worship through any particular means, idols or otherwise. And that unlike other religions, and this is important because every religion, we're going to see this is really important, every religion has to set itself apart from other religions. Every religion does this, every single one. So Hinduism puts it, the Indian Supreme Court puts it out in like this very direct way. Unlike other religions, absence of belief in a specific set of philosophical concepts. And this is very hard. Again, this is very hard for a lot of people. Hinduism does not have a super strict set of beliefs. Hinduism is about what you do. Hinduism is about doing what you do with loving devotion for the gods. It's not about belief in certain dogma. And we're going to see that there are a lot of religions like that. A lot of religions don't feel the need to set forth that we believe in X, Y, and Z, and only X, Y, and Z. And in fact, that way of thinking, it is very Western way of thinking. And it has its advantages, but it has its disadvantages as well. This is what it means to be Hindu according to the Indian Supreme Court. So now you're going to go ahead, after I finish the lecture and after I explain what part 6 is going to be, the readings we're going to do, go back and you're going to watch 2 videos. The first video is called Hinduism and Modern India. It talks about how devotion fits into daily life in India. They interview a Hindu family, mother, father, grandmother, 2 daughters. They talk about the way modern media has affected Hinduism. They talk about generation gaps between, the grandparents and the parents and the parents and the children, and how that and how things are changing very rapidly there. And it kind of emphasizes that Hinduism is very flexible in terms of personal beliefs and practices. And we just talked about this, right? There's no set way of believing. And there's this man, the sociologist, who's interviewed in this video, and he has a very thick accent. I'm not sure that everyone can understand him well, but he makes this really interesting point. He said that they did a census of a major Indian city, and they asked them, who is your personal god? Some people, Vishnu or Shiva or Sarasvati, Lakshmi, Durga, whoever it was. But for about 3% of the population, I think it was 3% of the population of that city, they named Jesus Christ as their personal God. Now, the population of the city, the population of Christians in the city is very, very small. It's less than 1%. Less than 1% of the population of that city is Christian. But clearly, a number of Hindus feel very comfortable claiming Jesus Christ as their personal God. It makes sense to them, right? Here's a man who is a manifestation of God, who teaches love and devotion and things like that. That makes sense to Hindus. It makes sense. And so this, for the small portion of Hindus in this particular city, they could claim Jesus Christ. I thought that was really interesting. This entire video talks about the way Hinduism is changing in modern India, and I think you're going to find it very interesting. And you're also going to see people performing puja, so you're going to get to see what that looks like. The next video you'll watch is called Hinduism in America. It's about immigrant groups who come to America and how they learn to practice their religion when there's no one, when they're in the minority, basically. The way in the 70s, when the first Indians started immigrating over to America, roughly, you had people who otherwise would not have socialized with each other coming together as communities, right? It kind of dissolved the caste system a little bit because there were so few Hindus that you might have to associate with whatever other Hindus that you can find, regardless of the region of India they come from, regardless of their caste, regardless of anything. Just the Hindus that you could find would form a community. And they would worship usually in people's homes. They didn't have temples. Now recently there are more temples around America that Hindus can go to. There's a temple outside Champaign that I visited before, and it looks like just kind of a very plain building from the outside, and the inside it's a Hindu temple. It also talks about the effects of individualism on Indian religion, right? This idea in America that you can kind of pick and choose what you want to do, which is a very American idea, right? You have freedom of religion, you have freedom to do what you want to do. But in India, there wasn't always that kind of freedom, right? You were bound by your family, you were bound by your dharma, your caste, whatever the ways that your village, the ways that your family practiced religion were the ways that you would practice religion. You come to America and things are very different. And also how Hindus who come to America are influenced by this concept of faith, which is not really a Hindu concept. It's a very Christian concept. So watch those 2 videos and then do the discussion part 5, which is what challenges does the modern world create for Hinduism? This will be a question we answer again and again with all the religions that we study. What challenges does that modern world create for Hinduism? For part 6, you're going to do a series of readings, and I'm going to talk about them briefly. Originally, I actually put these 2 videos I mentioned into part 6. I wanted that to be part of doing the readings and watching the videos, but I decided that I wanted those videos to inform your discussion of part 5, this idea of changes in the modern world. That being said, keep the videos in mind as you do the readings for part 6 and answer the discussion question for part 6, because I think the videos are relevant both to part 5 and to part 6. So you're going to do 3 readings by 3 different Hindus, and all 3 are going to be talking about what Hinduism means to them. So basically what I'm trying to do now is allow some more Hindus to come in and talk about what Hinduism is, not just me and an outsider, someone who's studied it as an outsider, but I want to give you a chance to learn about Hinduism from people who know it firsthand. So the first reading we're going to do is an essay written by my friend Ash, who lives in Champaign here actually, and is from southern India, and she's attending school here now. I asked her to talk about what Hinduism is to her, and I kind of expected her to talk about puja and talk about practices, but for Ash, she's a very intelligent woman, and so she wrote more of a philosophical and theological reflection, right? Philosophy being more like kind of the way the universe works, and theology being more the way God works, right? If I can briefly differentiate the two. So she talks about the way that she understands the universe working and her place within it. She's a very philosophical person. She talks about karma yoga, the importance of selfless work, and Raja Yoga. She has a regular meditation practice. That's a very important part of devotion to her. She talks about God as creative consciousness, which I think is very interesting because we've talked about all the different gods. The fact that the most Hindus choose like a personal God that they work with. But for Ash, she's a very philosophical person, as I said, so she thinks of God as creative consciousness, this great mind that creates things, that is just naturally creative, and she talks about what that means to her. She also uses this metaphor of the universe like a jeweled net, and it's a common myth or a common metaphor used in Hinduism. I have a description of it here that I'll read to you. It's also called Indra's net. It says, this great imaginary net is to be visualized as stretching throughout the entire universe, its vertical extension representing time, its horizontal space. At every point where the net's threads interconnect, one imagines a crystal bead symbolizing an individual existence. Each one of these innumerable crystal beads reflects on its surfaces not only every other bead in the net, but every reflection of every other bead, thus creating numberless, endless reflections of each other, while forming one complete and total whole. So the universe, according to this myth, the universe is like a great net, right? And the strings that go vertically are time, the strings that go horizontally are space. And wherever they meet is a point of existence, the existence that we know. At that existence is a little crystal bead. And there's a little crystal bead for each person, for each Atman, right? So this great net with these crystal beads. And these crystal beads reflect one another. But they not only reflect one another because each bead has reflections of its own. Each bead reflects every other reflection in every other bead. So everything is the point of it is that everything is reflected, and there's a certain oneness in the universe. Everything's a part of this net, and everything influences everything else. So I shall talk about that. It's a lovely metaphor, and I hope you enjoy it. The next thing we'll read is an article that I found in the Huffington Post. It's an editorial written by a Hindu man. And he talks about Mahashivaratri, and we saw pictures of Mahashivaratri in lecture number 4 when we saw the people dressed up as Shiva for the parade. That was Mahashivaratri. So this man is a Shaivite. He identifies as a Shaivite. Shiva is his personal god. And he talks about what Shiva means to him. specifically because, and this isn't hard to believe, Vishnu is probably the most popular of the gods in India, right? Vishnu is a god of preservation, of stability, of security and comfort. Vishnu is a god that's like a king who offers prosperity, who is very loving, very patient. But for this particular man, he talks about why Shiva is so dear to him, right? Shiva is very wise. He's very aware. He's pure. He's a god who teaches people how to be better people. He teaches people how to give up things of this world and not worry about stability in this life, and worry more about releasing karma and finding moksha in the next. So I thought that was very interesting. I wanted to give you a chance to hear from someone, from a Hindu, as to why they might be more devoted to one god than another. Hopefully this might give you some sense. The last thing we're going to read is an article from belief.net. It's called When Your Faith Isn't Faith-Based. It's written by Fred Stella. Is a man who actually converted to Hinduism. I told you that there aren't many people who convert to Hinduism. This man did. He converted to the Hindu Dharma when he was 15. And he's often asked to give lectures to various groups, churches, schools about what Hinduism means. And he says the thing that people have the hardest time with, he finds, is that his religion isn't a faith. His religion isn't based on faith. His religion is based upon more practices. And so he talks about what that means to him. I think it's very interesting. It brings into our discussion in this class the idea of orthodoxy and orthopraxy. Orthodoxy, you've heard this word before. You might not know that orthodox literally means right belief. Certain religions are orthodox. They're based on this idea that there are right beliefs. Christianity is a good example, right? Christianity is based on this idea of the belief in Jesus Christ as the Son of God, as a Savior, etc. Islam is based on the right belief that there is no God but God, and the Prophet Muhammad is his messenger, so on and so forth. But then there are religions that are more orthoprax. This means right practice, right? They're based upon doing the right thing. Hinduism is orthoprax. We're going to see Buddhism is very orthoprax. Most of the Eastern religions are very orthoprax. And that's not to say that Eastern religions don't have beliefs. They certainly do. That's not to say that Western religions don't have practices, because they certainly do. But rather, different religions put different emphasis on different things. Is it what you believe? Is it what's in your heart? Is it what you do? Is it doing things from a place of devotion? What is the right way to practice a religion, or what is the right way to be in a religion? Is it about what you believe, or is it about what you do? Of course, it's always a combination. But for Hinduism, it's more about practice. So he talks about religion without set beliefs, and then he has this wonderful quote where he says, Hinduism is not about what I want to believe. It's about what I'm able to believe. So from his point of view, Hinduism allows a certain freedom, not freedom, it allows a certain flexibility for its followers to do what they can. And last semester, I had the students read this article, and I think they thought what he was saying is that in Hinduism, you can choose. You can choose what you want to believe. You can choose what you want to do. And that's not what he's saying. It's not about choice. It's about ability. I don't know if I've told you this story, but there's a story, a true story, that there was a woman who went to Gandhi way back in the 30s or the 40s, who went to Gandhi and said, Guru, I follow your teachings, and I know you say it's really important to love God. She says, but I can't love God. I've tried. I just don't feel anything when I go to temple. And Gandhi says, well, who do you love? And she says, I love my nephew. And he says, then focus on loving your nephew and selflessly loving him and taking care of him and raising him correctly. And by loving your nephew, you'll be loving God. Right? It's not about it's not about who she's able to love. It's not about who she wants to love. It's about who she's able to love. It's about what she's able to do. And we've seen in Hinduism, from the 4 kinds of yoga, the different forms of devotion, Hinduism makes room for people to worship in different ways. And there are expectations, there are social obligations, there are values, but there is wiggle room around there, all those things. So I hope that makes